Hi, and welcome back to another episode of the DM's Corner. This is part of my Storm King's Thunder prep time. So if you're a player of my upcoming campaign, stop watching now. All the rest are very much welcome. So in this episode, I want to talk about this book, Beginning, Middles, and Ends. It's a book by Nancy Kress, and it's basically meant for writers who are interested in fiction writing, and it basically helps you better define what's going on in the beginning, what's going on in the middle of your story, and what's going on in the end of your story. And I've noticed that a lot of campaigns have an issue in the middle. Most of us can write a compelling beginning to the campaign, and most of us can think about how we want the campaign to end, but it's difficult to connect these 2 points. And this book actually does a great job of providing tools for writers about exactly how to do that. And after reading this book, I basically converted some of the advice to dungeon mastering, which is a little bit different because you don't control what the players do, but some of the techniques and some of the insights presented in this book over here are actually very much applicable to dungeon mastering. So as I said, a lot of campaigns have an issue with the middle, and when I'm reading Storm King's Thunder, I immediately understand why. You have this interesting opening scene in which the characters reach Nightstone and they see a town that was bombarded by giants, and we know what's going on in the end. We can just flip the pages in the book and understand who's the villain and what's going on, but in the middle there are something like 250 pages of information, and a big chapter in Storm King's Thunder is basically explaining about the north, the northern regions of the Sword Coast, and it's simply a huge chapter that can actually be the springboard for tons of adventures. So how do we tackle that? What do we do to make sure the campaign moves from the beginning to the end without losing track or getting stuck? So when we create plots, when I'm creating plots, and I'm sure that when a lot of you create plots, we basically think of an outline, and then we have locations and specific encounters, and we have NPCs that we want the characters to meet, and then we have a lot of what if questions, right? We design this location, and then we think, oh, what if the characters don't go there? Or we create an NPC, and then we think, oh, what if the characters don't interact with that NPC? Or maybe they do interact with it, but not in the way we anticipated. So we have this mishmash of locations and NPCs and mini adventures and mini plot hooks, and it's a big mess. And when the players interact with it, most of it goes out of the window, and it's very hard to maintain a very good storyline, using all this information we have, but without any glue to hold it together. So this book actually have a very good advice regarding that. So it's in page 66, and again, I really recommend getting this book. It's very cheap in Amazon. So basically what the book suggests is that you write something that is called the through line, and it's a little bit different from a plot line. A through line is basically the primary events of the most significant line of action that you have in your story, and we can translate it to our campaign, right? What are the most significant events that should happen throughout the campaign? And what I'm saying should happen is, should happen with the PCs, with the player characters involved. So you can see here in my campaign planner, basically I have those events here. So this is basically a rundown of the chapters in the adventure, right? So we have Nightstone, and we have traveling to one of the 3 locations that the adventure suggests as a springboard to the northern regions. And then we have the Savage Frontier, we have the Chosen Path, the players meet Harshnag, the giant, and learn about what's going on with the giants, etc., etc. So if you have the adventure, you are already familiar with all of this. So this is basically the most important events that my campaign should contain. Now, this is not enough, right? I mean, once we have that, we have, the most important events. What we usually do now is we inflate each event to an adventure. And as I said earlier, an adventure contains locations, an NPC, and a lot of what-if questions. So in this book, basically what the writer suggests is to throw all that and push all that back and think in scenes. You shouldn't, I mean, again, this is an advice, right? You shouldn't, you don't have to follow it, but the writer suggests just think in scenes. And we have 2 kinds of scenes. One kind is a dramatized scene in which the players and the characters actually participate. And the other type of a scene is a summary scene in which we as Dungeon Master basically convey information to the players without their characters being present when the event took place. So for example, Nightstone is should be, I mean, all the encounters in Nightstone should be built using dramatized scenes, right? The players are there. As if you've read Storm King's Thunder, you know that the players are urged to go to one of 3 locations, Bryn Shander and another 2 cities. In my campaign, I'm planning for them to reach Bryn Shander, and I'll present how exactly later on. But when they get to Bryn Shander or to Waterdeep or to whatever, any other location, how do they learn about what happened in the other 2 towns that they didn't visit? So this is where summary scenes come into place. So we have these 2 kinds of scenes. Now, how do we create good scenes? This is basically the most important tip that I have to give, and it comes from this book, right? I stole it from the book. I didn't invent it myself. So what the book says, and this is a very it's a great insight. Nancy Kress says, stories grow out of what characters do, and in turn what characters do grow out of what they want. And I think this is a sentence we should write and print it and glue it someplace around in our workplace, because what it means is that the campaign is basically all about what the characters do, and how do we as dungeon masters can predict or can think about what the characters should do, or what will they do. So what they'll do is based about what they want, and what they want is basically what the player wants plus what the character wants. And you should know your players, but if you don't, or if you're not sure, if it's a new situation, you're not familiar with the players, you should fall back to everything you know about the character. And this is where you have background coming into place, ideals, bonds, all this information. You can take it and use it to create great scenes, because the character's background is basically a summary of what they want, its goals, its motivations, its secrets, all these things. And now all you have to do is think about scenes that bring that to life. So for example, if you have a character, and one of my players just sent me a background of his character is basically good at finding things. Okay, this is what this character do. So I need to think about how to make sure to use that information to motivate the players to do something. So in my story, and in my Storm King's Thunder campaign, the characters don't simply end up in Bryn Shander because they got a quest from some NPC. No, the PC's employer told them, listen, I want you to locate someone. He is missing. I know he's in the north. I want you to travel to Bryn Shander, the last place that I know he was visiting, and locate him for me. So this is for me a way to create motivation for that specific character, the character that is good in finding things, people, objects, and motivate him to actually accept this job offer. And this is something that I do all the time. I take the character's background and I create scenes that propel them forward toward the story. It's not that they get to Nightstone, they save the people, they get quests from those people, and then they move on to do that quest. I mean, think about it. You just I don't know, saved a town, and one of the NPCs there told you, listen, I have a relative living 3 weeks travel time north. Please send him a message. This is, I mean, for me, it's not very. I'm not sure why the characters should actually do it, but if their background is written in such a way that I can actually take this quest and meld it into something that will sound plausible to those characters, then this is a win. So again, the main thing that I came out with from this quote is that motivation leads to action, and action, from the characters basically define your campaign. So leaning on the background is a good way to create scenes that propel the story forward. And how do you know if you have a good background? So a good background, when you read it, when the player sends it to you, it already should spark your imagination, and already in your mind you can see seeds of adventures by just reading that background. And basically what this background should provide you is some sort of a secret on that character, some sort of a goal that this character wants to achieve, maybe a contact someplace, maybe something to leverage that can be applied as leverage on that character. And also a good background works well in a group, right? So when I want to test a good background, basically I'm trying to think about a very simple question. If during a scene the character do something and then I ask him, why did you do it? The answer should be related somehow to the character's background, right? I mean, this is all about role-playing your character. If you decided that your character is a coward who is a criminal running from a previous crime gang, then why didn't you attack why don't you want to go and investigate the activities of the local thieves guild? His answer should be, well, I'm afraid of these guys because maybe they're connected to my previous boss. I don't want anything to do with it. So the way I test background is, after an action, if I can ask the players, why did you do that, and they give me a good answer according to their background, then I know it's a good background. So if you have good backgrounds, you know how to build scenes that can use these backgrounds, can use them, character motivation and character goals to basically make the story go forward. And this is the tricky part, because what you need to do is to align the plot line, the through line that we discussed earlier, with the characters' backgrounds and goals. So these things should go together. If the characters are all about accumulating data, not data, but arcane data and investigation of magic items, etc., and your campaign is political intrigue in some town, they don't work well together. If your players, all their backgrounds are about fighting monsters and killing things and getting loot, and you are into this heavy storytelling Curse of Strahd kind of campaign, then again it doesn't work very well. So I mean, given it's not working very well, you should be the one that connecting the plot line and what the characters want and make it basically work. So for example, in my campaign, two of my players decided that they are agent of the Lord's Alliance, and in this campaign, the Rhodes Alliance have a lot to say about the giant activity. So I already can think of all kinds of mini adventures and adventure seeds that connect the background of these characters to the main plotline, and I can even give you examples here. Yeah, here. So I basically took the encounter with Zephyros. He's basically having this flying tower. He stops in front of the PCs and asks, tells them, "Come aboard. I had a vision that you are important. Let me take you to wherever you want." This doesn't sound plausible to me. What I did is I basically took one of the player characters who is an ambassador of a place called Ruathim, which is one of the islands of the Moon She. And Zephyros, in the book, it's written that after he's on his way to the Moon She again. So I basically took those two pieces of information and connected them, and now Zephyros stops the PCs and helps them in return for that character who comes from the Moon She to help Zephyros float there and access a library that is located in the capital city of this kingdom, the Ruathim. So I basically took a part of the character background, I took an element of the plotline and I meshed them together, hopefully in a way that makes sense. So this is what I do. This is an adventure seed that I have. It's an idea. It's an idea of a scene, or maybe multiple scenes that connect an element of the plot line to one of the player characters' background. So in my opinion, this is a better way to propel the story instead of simply giving the players quests out of nowhere. Okay, so what happens if we get stuck? So again, building a campaign, and especially a campaign like Storm King's Thunder, it's a huge campaign. So the first session goes well, the second session goes well, the third and the fourth and the fifth, and somewhere around session 10 or 12 we get stuck. We don't know what to do, or everything we write seems like we've done it 1,000 times before, and it becomes a chore and the campaign dies. So here are my tips about how not to fall into that trap. And I personally had that experience in my Curse of Strahd campaign. It lasted for 18 sessions, and around session 9 I began to feel like I need to do something because I was getting a little bit bored. And I wasn't sure the characters go where I wanted them to go, or the campaign wanted them to go. So I just sat down and I made sure that I didn't fall into any of the 3 pitfalls that I'm going to state right now. So the first pitfall is simply setting too high expectations out of yourself. Now, we all see Critical Role and we see dice camera action, and we see a lot of internet shows with great DMs and great players lasting 100 sessions, and every session is cool. So why can't we do it? And a lot of time when you create adventures, when you create scenes, you look at these great role-playing games and you think, oh my god, what I am doing right now it's not even near to what they are doing, and you get bogged down. So don't. You are not Matt Mercer or Chris Perkins or whoever, and I'm not either. So this is my game, this is my table, and I'm watching Critical Role, but to get inspired. I'm not comparing myself to them. So set your expectations right. What happens if you don't know what happens next? You've reached to a point in which the campaign seems stuck. And in my opinion, the only reason for that to happen is that you don't really know what your characters want or your players want. Because what they want, again, should affect what they do, and this should propel the story forward. So if you find yourself in a situation in which you think that the campaign is stuck, simply look at what the players react to, what the characters react to, and build accordingly. And you can even ask them if you feel like you're really stuck. before the next session, email all your players or talk to them and ask them, you know, what do you enjoy most? What should I invest in now? Do you want me to take this campaign into this direction or that direction? And if they're, you know, good friends, then they'll answer you. They'll give you honest answers, and you know, things should and could move forward. The third pitfall is that the campaign took a wrong turn. So I wanted the players to go to Bryn Shander. They made a 90 degrees turn and ended up in another town or whatever. So it happens. We should not be afraid to discard you know, things that we did in our prep time. But again, this means that what you thought the players want and what they actually want, these two axes, they don't move in the same line. So you need to rethink and visit what the characters want and what the players want, and either you run with it, with what they want, or you run with it for a while and then try to take back the story to where you want it to go. But don't force it. If the players are having a lot of fun exploring some, you know, side quest or whatever, and they took the campaign to a, you know, completely different way, as long as it's fun, it's fun. It's D&D, it's a game, it should be fun. So don't be afraid to simply roll with it. Okay, so I think I've spoken enough. I still have a lot to say about my prep time, Storm King's Thunder, but again, all I wanted to say is basically look at this book, try to find it in Amazon or something like that, and basically think about your campaign in scenes. Know what your characters and players want. This will affect what they do, and vice versa. What they do should be reflected you know, about what they actually want. And if you know what your characters want, you can basically design scenes that propel the story forward. And in order to do that, all you have to do is basically have this list of the most major events that you want the characters to experience. And if you have that, and you have the characters' goals and motivation, you know what motivates them, you can write scenes that actually make sense in the context of the story. So I hope you liked this video. Let me know in the comments if it, you know, if it makes sense to you, and if you have questions or anything you want to do about how I design my campaign, you can you know, subscribe to my channel. I basically upload my prep time, or I will upload more you know, episodes like this in which I basically dissect how I do my prep time. So this is it, and I'll see you around. Thank you.